Stephen Curry had no idea that stopping by an upscale boutique in downtown San Francisco would lead to one of the most powerful moments of his career. What started as a simple shopping trip would become a viral sensation that changed everything. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of justice and kindness. Thursday afternoon, 3:20 p.m. Golden State Warriors superstar Stephen Curry walked into Meridian Luxury Boutique on Union Square, wearing a simple gray hoodie, dark jeans, and his signature Under Armour sneakers. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating racks of designer clothes and gleaming jewelry displays. Well-dressed customers browsed quietly, their conversations mixing with soft classical music. The boutique exuded sophistication, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and staff in perfectly pressed black uniforms. This was where San Francisco's elite shopped, where a single handbag could cost more than most people's monthly salary. Curry approached the counter with his characteristic calm demeanor, planning to buy a gift for his wife Aisha. But as he waited, he heard a commotion near the back of the store. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," came a sharp voice from the accessories section. Curry turned to see a well-dressed elderly black woman standing near a display of designer scarves. She wore a modest navy dress and carried a worn but clean purse. Her posture was dignified, despite the obvious discomfort of the situation. The voice belonged to Madison Wells, a blonde store associate in her late 20s with pale complexion and a condescending expression. Madison wore the boutique's signature black uniform, but her attitude suggested she saw herself as more than just staff. "I was just looking at the scarves," the elderly woman said softly, her voice carrying the gentle authority Curry somehow recognized. "I'm not causing any trouble." "This isn't really your type of store," Madison replied, her voice loud enough for other customers to hear. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the department stores down the street." A few other customers, Sarah Chen, a tech executive in a designer blazer, and Robert Martinez, a well-dressed businessman, glanced over with growing concern. Sarah pulled out her phone, sensing something wasn't right. What happened in the next few minutes would not only shock everyone in that boutique but create a moment that would be remembered for years to come. The tension in Meridian Luxury Boutique escalated quickly as Madison Wells, the pale-complexioned store associate with perfectly styled blonde hair and sharp blue eyes, continued her discriminatory behavior. She stood with her arms crossed, her black uniform pristine, but her attitude anything but professional. "People like you usually prefer different shopping venues," Madison said, her voice dripping with condescension as she gestured dismissively toward the elderly black woman. "These prices might be overwhelming for your budget." The elderly woman, still maintaining her dignified composure in her modest navy dress and comfortable walking shoes, replied with quiet strength. "I'm a retired teacher. I saved for months to buy my granddaughter a graduation gift." "A teacher," Madison scoffed, her very pale complexion flushing slightly with superiority. "Well, perhaps a nice card from the drugstore would be more appropriate. These scarves start at $800. Sarah Chen, the Asian tech executive in her expensive blazer and designer glasses, couldn't hide her shock. She discreetly started live streaming on Instagram, whispering to her followers, "You guys are not going to believe what I'm witnessing right now." Robert Martinez, a distinguished Latino businessman in his 50s, wearing a tailored suit, shook his head in disgust. "This is unacceptable," he muttered to another customer. Meanwhile, Stephen Curry stood frozen near the front counter, his athletic frame tense under his gray hoodie. Something about the elderly woman's voice, her mannerisms, the way she carried herself with quiet dignity despite the humiliation, triggered a memory he couldn't quite place. Madison Wells continued her assault on the woman's dignity. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave before you disturb our other customers. We have certain standards to maintain here." The elderly woman's shoulders sagged slightly, but she maintained her grace. "I understand. I'll go." What happened next would shock everyone in that store and soon thousands of people watching online. As the elderly black woman in her modest navy dress turned to leave Meridian Luxury Boutique, her dignified acceptance of the humiliation sparked something Stephen Curry couldn't ignore. The NBA superstar in his gray hoodie and jeans stepped forward, his athletic frame moving with purpose. Madison Wells, the blonde store associate with very pale complexion and condescending sneer, was already turning away when Curry approached the situation. Her black uniform and superiority complex had blinded her to who else was in the store. "Excuse me," Curry said, his voice calm but carrying the authority that made him a leader on and off the basketball court. "What seems to be the problem here?" Madison glanced at him dismissively, taking in his casual attire and athletic build. "Just explaining to this woman that this establishment might not suit her needs. Nothing that concerns you." Sarah Chen, the tech executive live streaming on Instagram, watched her viewer count explode. The live stream now has 5,000 viewers, she whispered to her camera. "Something big is about to happen here." Stephen Curry studied the elderly woman's face more carefully, her kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite the humiliation. Suddenly, recognition hit him like a lightning bolt. "Mrs. Dorothy Williams?" he said softly, his voice filled with disbelief and growing emotion. The elderly woman looked up, her tired eyes widening as she recognized the man who had grown from a scrawny elementary school student into a global superstar. Little Stephen Curry. The recognition was electric. This was the woman who had encouraged him during his awkward elementary school years at Charlotte Christian School, who had stayed after class to help him with his reading, who had told his parents that their skinny, basketball-obsessed son had something special inside him. Madison Wells frowned, confused by this unexpected connection. Robert Martinez, the businessman witnessing the scene, began recording with his phone. The soft murmur of other customers recognizing the NBA star began to ripple through the store. "Mrs. Williams taught me in 3rd grade," Curry announced, his voice growing stronger and more determined. "She's one of the most incredible people I've ever known." Sarah's Instagram livestream viewer count jumped to 15,000 as she captured the moment. The hashtag boutique discrimination started gaining traction as viewers shared the stream across social media platforms. What happened next would transform this moment of discrimination into a viral sensation that reached millions. The recognition between Stephen Curry and Mrs. Dorothy Williams sent shockwaves through Meridian Luxury Boutique. Madison Wells, the blonde store associate with very pale complexion and sharp features, stood frozen as the reality of the situation began to dawn on her. "Mrs. Williams," Curry said, his voice thick with emotion, as he looked at his former teacher in her modest navy dress and worn but dignified appearance. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to buy my granddaughter Zoe a beautiful scarf for her college graduation," Mrs. Williams replied, her voice still gentle despite the humiliation she'd endured. "She's the first in our family to graduate from Stanford. I've been saving for months." Stephen Curry's expression hardened as he turned toward Madison, whose confident demeanor was cracking like ice. Her black uniform and perfectly styled appearance couldn't hide her growing panic. "And you were refusing to serve her?" Curry asked, his calm voice carrying an edge that made the entire store fall silent. I didn't know," Madison stammered, her very pale face now flushed with embarrassment and fear. "You didn't know what?" Curry stepped closer, his athletic frame towering over the trembling associate. "You didn't know she was a human being deserving of respect. You didn't know she was a retired teacher who dedicated 35 years to helping children like me." Sarah Chen's Instagram livestream had exploded to 50,000 viewers as word spread across social media. The comments were flooding in. "Get her fired. This is disgusting. Stephen Curry is a hero." Robert Martinez, the businessman recording everything, shook his head in amazement. "I can't believe what I'm witnessing," he said to another customer. At that moment, the store manager, James Harrison, a middle-aged man with graying hair and an expensive suit, rushed over after hearing about the commotion. His face went pale when he saw Stephen Curry standing protectively next to the elderly woman. "Mr. Curry," Harrison said nervously, recognizing the global superstar immediately. "Is there a problem here?" "There's a major problem," Curry replied, his voice steady but filled with controlled anger. Your employee just discriminated against one of the most important people in my life. Mrs. Williams is a retired teacher who shaped the minds of countless children, including mine. Harrison's eyes darted between Curry, Mrs. Williams, and the terrified Madison. The manager realized that his employee had just created a public relations nightmare that could destroy the boutique's reputation. "Madison," Harrison said sharply, "my office, now." But Curry wasn't finished. What he did next would be talked about for years to come. Stephen Curry gently took Mrs. Dorothy Williams' arm, his protective gesture speaking louder than words. The retired teacher, in her modest navy dress, looked up at her former student with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by his support. "Mrs. Williams," Curry said, his voice filled with respect and love, "you're not going anywhere. We're going to find that perfect scarf for Zoe together." Madison Wells, the blonde associate with very pale complexion and trembling hands, watched in horror as her world collapsed. Her black uniform seemed to shrink around her as manager James Harrison approached with fury in his eyes. "Madison, you're fired," Harrison announced, his voice echoing through the silent boutique. "Effective immediately. Clean out your locker and leave." But Stephen Curry raised his hand. "Actually, Mr. Harrison, I have a better idea." The NBA superstar pulled out his phone and made a call that would change everything. "Hi, this is Stephen Curry. I need to speak with the owner of Meridian Luxury Boutique about implementing a mandatory respect and diversity training program for all staff." Sarah Chen's Instagram livestream had reached 75,000 viewers, with the hashtag #RespectMrsWilliams trending nationally. Comments poured in praising Curry's response and demanding justice for the retired teacher. Curry then did something that stunned everyone in the store. He walked to the scarf display and selected the most beautiful silk scarf, a $1,200 piece in Stanford University colors. "This one," he said to Harrison, "for Mrs. Williams' granddaughter Zoe. And I want Mrs. Williams to be given VIP treatment here for life. Any purchase she makes, send me the bill." Mrs. Williams tried to protest, but Curry smiled with the same warmth she remembered from that shy third grader decades ago. "You believed in me when I was just a skinny kid who couldn't sit still. You told my parents I had potential when others saw problems. This is the least I can do." The emotional scene moved everyone present to tears. Robert Martinez, still recording, captured Mrs. Williams embracing her former student as the entire store erupted in applause. The story went viral within hours, Sarah posted on her social media. Within 24 hours, the video had 2 million views and sparked a nationwide conversation about respect, dignity, and recognizing the value of teachers. Meridian Luxury Boutique implemented new policies, and Mrs. Williams's story inspired similar changes across retail chains nationwide. Zoe graduated from Stanford wearing her beautiful scarf, never knowing it represented so much more than a gift. It represented the power of standing up for what's right. Stephen Curry's simple act of recognition and respect reminded the world that true champions don't just win games, they win hearts by treating every person with the dignity they deserve. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to remember that respect, regardless of their appearance or background. In the comments below, tell us about a teacher who made a difference in your life.